The weight of grief sat heavily on my shoulders as I stood in my dimly lit kitchen, staring at the unopened envelope in my hands. It had been 4 months since my husband, Daniel, died in a tragic accident. For months of suffocating loneliness, of waking up in the middle of the night expecting to find him beside me, only to be met with cold emptiness. I had barely left the house since the funeral. The world outside felt too overwhelming, too cruel for a woman still drowning in sorrow. My family had reached out at first, calls, messages, check-ins, but as time passed, they seemed to move on while I remained trapped in my grief. And then this, a letter, an invitation from my sister, Emily. "Hey sis, I know things have been tough, but I'd love for you to come to Jack's birthday party this Saturday. It'll be nice to see you again. We all miss you." I read the words over and over, my fingers trembling. Emily and I had never been particularly close. Growing up, she had always been the golden child, outspoken, charming, and effortlessly the center of attention. I was the quieter one, the one who faded into the background while she basked in the spotlight. Our relationship had become even more strained after Daniel's death. She had sent a few texts, but they were generic at best, lacking the warmth and sincerity I desperately needed. Why now? Why invite me after all this time? I debated for hours, pacing the house, arguing with myself. A part of me wanted to ignore the invitation, to stay hidden in my world of grief. But another part, the part that longed for connection, for normalcy, whispered that maybe this was an opportunity. Maybe Emily was trying to mend things. Maybe she truly missed me. With a deep breath, I made my decision. I would go. The day of the party arrived sooner than I was prepared for. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my black dress, one of the few outfits that still fit after months of barely eating. My once vibrant eyes looked dull, my face paler than I remembered. I tried to smile, but the reflection staring back at me was a stranger. I arrived at Emily's house just as the party was in full swing. Laughter echoed through the open windows, children ran around the yard, and the scent of barbecue filled the air. It should have been comforting. Instead, it felt wrong, too lively, too cheerful for someone who still carried so much pain. I hesitated at the door before knocking. A few seconds later, Emily opened it, her eyes widening in surprise. "Oh my God, you actually came," she said, pulling me into a hug before I could react. Her enthusiasm was too much. It felt forced, unnatural. Something about the way she held me, how quickly she pulled away, sent a strange feeling down my spine. Come in, come in. Everyone's dying to see you," she said, leading me inside. I stepped into the house and immediately felt the shift in energy. The chatter quieted, eyes darted toward me, and whispered conversations trailed off. It was subtle, but I noticed it. A knot formed in my stomach. Why were they looking at me like that? Something was off, and I was about to find out why. The uneasy silence lasted only a few seconds before Emily clapped her hands together and forced a bright smile. "Everyone, look who finally decided to join us," she announced. Slowly, conversations picked up again, though I could still feel lingering glances in my direction. I forced a small smile and stepped further inside, trying to shake off the discomfort settling in my chest. The living room was decorated with blue and green balloons, a "Happy Birthday, Jack" banner hanging above the fireplace. Kids ran past me, laughing and shrieking, while the adults stood in small groups, chatting over drinks. It all felt normal, except for the way I was being watched. Emily led me toward the kitchen, where my parents were standing with a few relatives. My mother's eyes softened when she saw me. "Oh, honey, it's so good to see you," she said, pulling me into a hug. My father gave me a stiff nod. "Glad you're here." The warmth I had hoped for wasn't there. I could feel it, the awkwardness, the hesitation. It was as if they didn't know how to talk to me anymore, as if my grief had made me a stranger. Trying to push past the tension, I focused on Jack. "Where's the birthday boy?" I asked. Emily beamed. "He's in the backyard with the other kids. You should say hi." I nodded, forcing a smile. "I will." As I turned to grab a drink, my eyes landed on someone I hadn't expected to see. Standing near the patio doors, laughing with a group of men, was Ryan. My breath caught in my throat. Ryan had been Daniel's best friend. They had grown up together, inseparable since childhood. After Daniel's death, Ryan had disappeared. No calls. No messages. Nothing. It was like he had vanished from my life completely. And yet, here he was, at my sister's house, laughing like nothing had happened. The room suddenly felt too small. My pulse quickened, my fingers tightening around the glass in my hand. Before I could stop myself, I was walking toward him. He noticed me approaching and stiffened. The smile on his face faltered, and for a brief second, I saw something in his eyes. Guilt. Ryan, I said, my voice quieter than I intended. He cleared his throat. Hey, I didn't expect to see you here. I narrowed my eyes. Clearly, an awkward silence stretched between us. I studied him closely. He looked different. More tense, less carefree than I remembered. Where have you been? I asked. Ryan shifted uncomfortably. I've been busy. Too busy to check on me? To even say anything after Daniel died? He exhaled and ran a hand through his hair. Look, Before he could finish, Emily appeared beside us. Oh, you two have some catching up to do, she said, her tone a little too cheerful. Come on, let's sit down. I wasn't in the mood to sit. I wasn't in the mood for any of this. But something about the way Emily looked between me and Ryan sent a chill through me. She was hiding something, and I was going to find out what. The uneasy feeling in my stomach refused to fade. I could feel it in the way Emily kept glancing at Ryan, the way Ryan avoided my eyes, and the way the entire room seemed to tense when I arrived. Something wasn't right. I followed Emily and Ryan into the dining area, where a few guests were seated. Emily poured drinks, acting as if everything was normal, but I wasn't fooled. My grip tightened around my glass as I turned to Ryan. You never answered my question, I said. Ryan shifted uncomfortably. Which one? I narrowed my eyes. Where have you been? Why did you disappear after Daniel died? Emily let out a nervous laugh. Come on, let's not do this here. It's Jack's birthday. I ignored her. Ryan exhaled and rubbed the back of his neck. I needed time. Time. My voice hardened. Time for what? You were Daniel's best friend. He would have wanted you to be there for me. His jaw clenched, and for a brief moment, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Fear. I couldn't, he murmured. Why not? I pressed. He didn't answer. Instead, he looked at Emily. My heart dropped. Why was he looking at her? I turned to my sister, my mind racing. She was pale, her fingers gripping her glass too tightly. Something about the way they were acting, like two people sharing a secret they didn't want me to know, made my stomach twist. A realization struck me like a slap to the face. I swallowed hard, my voice barely above a whisper. Emily, what's going on? She forced a smile. Nothing. God, you're being so dramatic. Dramatic? No. This was something more. My mind flashed back to the whispers when I arrived, the way people avoided my eyes. The guilt on Ryan's face. The nervousness in Emily's voice. I wasn't just imagining things. Something had happened. And then, like a puzzle snapping into place, it hit me. My breath caught in my throat. No, I whispered, shaking my head. Tell me it's not true. Emily's face went blank. Ryan looked away. Tears burned in my eyes as I took a step back. Tell me you weren't with him. The room fell silent. Emily finally exhaled, setting her drink down with shaking hands. Listen, it's not what you think. I let out a bitter laugh, my whole body trembling. Oh, really? Because it looks like you were sleeping with my husband before he died. Gasps rippled through the guests. Someone muttered, Oh my God. Emily's expression twisted. It wasn't like that. Then how was it? My voice cracked. Explain it to me. Explain why my husband's best friend and my own sister have been acting like guilty criminals since I walked through the door. Ryan finally spoke. It happened once, he admitted, his voice thick with shame. Before the accident. The world tilted. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Emily reached for me. Please listen. I jerked away. Don't touch me. Tears blurred my vision. My own sister. The person who was supposed to love and protect me had betrayed me in the worst possible way. I turned on my heel and stormed toward the door, ignoring the calls behind me. I needed air. I needed to escape. And most of all, I needed to know the whole truth. Because something told me there was more to the story. And I wasn't stopping until I found out. I barely felt the cold night air as I stepped outside, my mind spinning. My chest heaved with shallow breaths, and my hands trembled at my sides. Emily, my own sister, my blood. She had slept with Daniel. Before the accident, before his death. The betrayal was like a knife in my gut, twisting deeper with every second that passed. But something told me this wasn't the end of the truth. There was more. A shuffling sound behind me made me turn. Ryan had followed me out. "Wait," he said, holding up his hands as if to calm me. I glared at him, my rage boiling over. "You have 10 seconds to explain why I shouldn't hate you forever." His jaw tightened. "It wasn't supposed to happen. I never meant to hurt you." I let out a bitter laugh. "You never meant to? Oh, well, that makes it all okay, doesn't it?" Ryan's face twisted with guilt. It was one night. Daniel was going through something. He and Emily. "Don't." I cut him off. "Do not try to defend them." "I'm not," Ryan said quickly. "But there's something you don't know. Something about Daniel's accident." My stomach dropped. "What are you talking about?" I demanded. Ryan hesitated. His gaze flickered back toward the house, where voices and laughter continued as if my entire world hadn't just crumbled. "I wasn't there that night," he said slowly. "But Emily was." My breath caught. "Emily was there the night Daniel died?" Ryan nodded grimly, as if he could read my mind. "She didn't tell you?" "No," I whispered, my body going numb. Ryan exhaled and ran a hand down his face. "She was with him the night of the accident. I don't know exactly what happened, but I do know one thing." He looked me dead in the eyes. "Daniel wasn't alone when he crashed." A chill ran down my spine. "What?" I breathed. Ryan swallowed hard. "Someone else was in the car." The world around me blurred. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. I took a step back, shaking my head. "No, that can't be true. The police said they never found the other person," Ryan said quietly. "But I think Emily knows who it was." My whole body turned cold. Emily had lied to me. She had betrayed me with my husband. And now, she had hidden the truth about his death. I turned on my heel and stormed back inside. I wasn't leaving without answers. Emily was going to tell me everything. I stormed back into the house, my pulse pounding so loudly I could barely hear the party noise around me. My eyes locked onto Emily, who was laughing awkwardly with a group of guests, pretending as if nothing had happened. That ended now. "Emily!" My voice cut through the room like a blade. She froze, her smile vanishing. The guests around her fell silent, sensing the tension in the air. Ryan stepped in behind me, his face grim. Emily turned to me with wide eyes. "Can we not do this here?" she whispered harshly. I ignored her. "You were there," I said, my voice shaking. "The night Daniel died." Her face drained of color. Whispers rippled through the room. My heart thundered in my chest, but I refused to back down. "Tell me the truth," I demanded. "Who was in the car with him?" Emily licked her lips, glancing around the room as if searching for an escape. "Tell me!" I shouted. She flinched. "It was me," she finally admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Gasps echoed through the crowd. I felt like the air had been knocked out of me. My throat closed up. "You were in the car. But the police report." "I ran," she blurted out, her voice cracking. "I was scared. I didn't want anyone to know." I took a step closer. "You left him." Tears filled her eyes. "He was still alive when I got out," she whispered. I didn't know what to do. I panicked. My stomach twisted into knots. "So you let him die alone?" Emily's breath hitched, and for the first time, real guilt flashed across her face. "I thought someone would find him. I didn't think. Didn't think." My voice was hoarse. "You didn't think about me? About how I had to live with not knowing the truth?" Tears streamed down her cheeks. "I didn't know how to tell you. I was ashamed. Shame. That's what this all came down to." She had let my husband die, hidden the truth, and carried on with her life while I was drowning in grief. I clenched my fists. "You had an affair with him, and when he needed you the most, you abandoned him." Emily sobbed, but I felt nothing. No sympathy. No pity. Just a hollow ache in my chest. I turned to Ryan. "Did you know?" He shook his head. "Not until recently." I swallowed the lump in my throat and looked at Emily one last time. I lost Daniel that night, but I also lost you. Emily gasped. No, please. I can't forgive you, I whispered. Not for this. The room was silent as I turned and walked out. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. For the first time since Daniel's death, I finally knew the truth. And now, I could finally move on.